Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales Show. Today, my guest is Adam Brown. He is the head of channel sales at Samsung. And a little bit about Adam. So, Adam helps Samsung's business customers to transform digitally using mobility hardware, software, services, and solutions. But on a personal level, Adam's passionate about solving real-world commercial problems using insights, data, and teams of people. He's built his career on a track record of building new businesses or fixing that which was considered broken or neglected. Right now, he's leading Samsung's reseller and distribution channel business across a B2B universe of IT and mobile resellers and authorized distribution partners. He leads an experienced sales team, which he says is a privilege, and he's responsible for the creation and execution of commercial plans to deliver growth. Adam, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on. Sounds good. Sounds good. It rolls off the tongue quite nicely. So, yeah, how are you doing anyway?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I'm really good. It's great to be here. It's great to be talking to you. It's a bit awkward to hear that played back at you.
Mm.
It was supposed to be for other people to read, not for me to listen to. But yeah, no, that's me.
How did I do?
Yeah, pretty good. I think. I think pretty good. I think it is a universe because it's a lot of customers. The IT channel, the mobile channel is huge.
Yeah,
There are literally thousands of resellers. So
yeah,
yeah, it really is a universe. It's a big channel.
great. So, I suppose after that intro, maybe you could, in your own words, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Is there anything specific you're working on that you're excited about at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, you did a pretty good job with the intro. I do work at Samsung. My job is to sell Samsung's kit into other businesses. My background is actually, mainly retail. So I came from a kind of consumer mindset, but I find myself in this world of B2B now, which, um, is very different to consumer, and it's also not. And
Mm.
I think it's really interesting. The two sides will tell each other they're very different, but actually they're pretty similar. It's about building good relationships. It's about, being commercial. It's about, doing the best you can for the business you work for, trying to create value for partners. And then, in the end, it's about trying to solve some problems. So, of course, you can sell people a phone nowadays to help them talk to other people. That still happens. People still use the phone to speak to each other. But a phone is, and a tablet and a PC, they can do an awful lot more now than just make connections. So, yeah, my job is to try and stitch all that together, and help my account managers to sell the most they can and not get into too much trouble on the way.
Yeah, and you're kind of alluding to it here, but I mean, really, it's human connection, is it? Whether it's a piece of technology or whatever it is, as you say, B2B, B2C, sales is about effective communication, building those connections, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think obviously, B2B has very traditionally been about relationships in a really big way because there's a lot of trust involved. And if you don't have trust with the people you're doing business with, it's very transactional then, and it just comes down to price. So I certainly think creating value for the channel and the partners you work with is about trust. It's about relationships. Um, that said, I think there's an awful lot of it's changed a lot. I think B2B has changed a lot, and the IT channel's changed a lot. You can't just rely on relationships anymore. It's a lot more. Well, professional is not the right word, but it's certainly much more commercial, I think, than it used to be.
Mm.
And it's incredibly competitive, ruthlessly competitive. And so, yeah, you've got to be very commercial. You've got to be able to do the numbers. You've got to be able to work collaboratively as well with other teams of people. So sales doesn't exist on its own. Sales and marketing, particularly in the channel, are really, really intertwined. The marketeers don't like it when I say this, but sales and marketing are left hand, right hand. For me, they're part of the same
Mm.
conversation. So yeah, unless you can work well with those people as well, inside your business as well as with your customers, then it doesn't matter what product you've got because you've got to have those connections.
Yeah. The that's it, growing emphasis on the commercial side of things. What do you put that down to?
Well, I think it's much more transparent now. The buyer's journey is much more digital than it used to be. And if you think, um, most of the journey now is online in some way. And so, instead of relying on a one-on-one conversation and only the information that you get from your your account manager or your vendor that would be the whole of your source of truth. You've got, as a buyer now, you've got tons and tons of places to go and look for information. And so, yeah, you have to be more commercial. You can't hide anything now. And that transparency, I guess, is good for both sides, but it does mean salespeople in particular, I think, have to be much more mindful of what the buyer actually really needs and wants. There's a downside to that, of course, which is they're also overwhelmed with information. And I think that's probably true for all of us, right? And it's only going to get worse with AI. We've all got way too much information now. So, the seller's job into a buyer for me has changed a lot from being, bring them the truth to help them navigate the truth, and bring them kind of challenging insights, cut through all the noise and kind of, help them figure out which information they should listen to and which they should ignore.
Okay, AI. So you mentioned there, that's a nice segue into what's going to probably be the meat of this conversation. I'll set the scene here. So Adam put out a post on LinkedIn a few weeks back, and he's talking about the impending job apocalypse. So, and by the way,
I was pleased with that.
it's not AI. I like it. I like it. It's a good one. If you don't already follow or haven't connected with Adam on LinkedIn, do so, because he puts out some great stuff, really, really good stuff. So he says 300 million people could lose their jobs to the next wave of artificial intelligence. Here are the key skills you'll need in sales and marketing to avoid the impending job apocalypse. So I've set the scene there. I'll let you run with this, and I'll chime in as and when. But where do you want to go from here, Adam?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that, and this is I'm not this is my quote. I'm stealing this, but the impact of AI is both overestimated and underestimated. And so, if you're a Gartner who wrote that 300 million, I think it was Gartner that research came from.
Yeah.
It's a big, scary number designed to attract attention, as much as anything else. And Gartner are fabulous, right? They're very smart people, and so that number is, as scientific as it can be at this point. But it's also a bit dramatic. So it makes a useful headline for a LinkedIn carousel post because it gets people's attention. And so I think that's a big scary one to beat you with. I think what I also tried to point out in that post was actually, there's a lot of positivity to come from AI. And so I'm certainly not saying, AI is going to destroy value or destroy jobs or take it all away from us. I do think there's going to be a lot of change. And as is always the case with change, it's going to be disruptive, right? And there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. There are going to be some people whose jobs either disappear or change completely. But then there's going to be a whole bunch of jobs and value created for other people on the other side. So, where that equation balances out yet, I don't think any of us really know. But what I think we can say really safely is that if you work in sales and or marketing, if you work in the information economy, if your job involves words or numbers in spreadsheets or in, then for sure your job's going to be impacted. Something's going to change for you. The other thing and the other truth, and I think what I tried to talk to in that post is that I think everyone's very focused on, and I did the same thing myself, learn the tools, right? If you're not, I see this headline all the time. If you're not learning ChatGPT, you're being left behind. There's 1,000 new AI tools have launched this week. Don't panic, quick, learn them. And I think again, it's fear created for eyeballs, right? And it does its job. And I do think, yes, learn the tools, like learn to use the AI tools, just as you would learn, how to use Excel or or Teams or any other tool that you have on your PC. Learn the AI tools for sure. If that's all you do, if that's all you worry about, you're sort of abandoning the stuff that makes you human.
Mm.
And so it would be really easy, I think, to through fear, just pivot into just becoming like obsessed or focused completely on the tool itself, as opposed to the skills that are going to help you deploy those tools into your job, into your teams, into your customers, and with your network.
Yeah, and understanding how the tech is going to enhance those soft skills, the human aspect, right? It reminds me of Justin Michael quote in the book Tech Powered Sales, and he says that, I'm paraphrasing here, but whether it's AI or any other tech, the point of it isn't necessarily to displace us or replace us. It's really to remove a lot of those kind of non-essential, non-human activities so that we can actually have more and better human connections. At least that's my view on it.
Yeah, and I think it's good to be optimistic about this because, like with anything, it's very easy to play it forward and say, well, the current rate of trajectory for our environment means that we'll have run out of water and air in 20 years' time, or you can be very doom and gloom about it. And I think I've always been a techno optimist. I've always been very optimistic about what technology can and will deliver. And I think there are tons of really smart people right now working on using AI for the better. And I think they outweigh, anyone who's trying to simply just replace human beings. Now, I'm not saying that I think everyone knows exactly how some of the negative externalities will play out. And I think there are big implications socially, just like, when digital happened and we switched from a very analog world to a very digital world, it happened pretty quickly. And there's a lot of disruption and there are plenty of people that suffered as a result. But overall, it's, been a positive thing. Then we had a wave of social, right? It's like social media that transformed the way that we as humans, used information and learn and, absorb things. Quite a bit of that was negative, actually. And I think we've realized that now. There's no doubt that AI is kind of the next big wave to affect us as humans, and it's probably going to be more disruptive than those first two. And what I think and what I hope, and to your point, is what I hope it's going to do is really force us to look to each other much more than we have been doing. Because AI will replace, and exactly as you said, it's going to get rid of a load of stuff that we now do. And it almost frees that in a good world, in an optimistic world, that gives us then the time to focus on doing the things that make us human and doubling down on interacting with each other and building those, the soft skills that I tried to call out in the post. That's kind of, it's my optimistic view of what's going to happen.
Yeah. As you say, there already are, and there'll continue to be winners and losers in all of this. But it's about understanding that, right? And I guess, again, it's a nice segue into the next stage of this conversation, if you like. Maybe we can jump into some of the tips that you laid out, some of the advice you laid out.
Sure.
I'll throw out the headlines, and then perhaps you can expand on them, give a bit more thought on them. So, first point: study human behaviors and understand the why behind them. Tell us about that.
So one of the gaps for AI, as I see it at the minute, is they'll never truly. By the way, we should just say very quickly, artificial intelligence is a very broad term and it means a lot of things to a lot of people. I think what we're talking about here is what you're seeing at the minute is large language models, generative AI creating, new words and new pictures in particular, right? That's what we're talking about. Now, those systems are not really intelligent, not by most people's definition. They appear to be very intelligent because of how you interact with them, but behind the scenes, are they really intelligent? You could argue they're not. And so one of the things that they don't really, understand is human decision making. They can emulate it pretty closely, but they can never really fully understand how and why we make decisions, because of course there's the rational, logical part of what we do, and then there's the emotional, biological, part of what we do. And one of the books I reference in that section is the Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters. I've seen him talk. He's incredible. He really talks a lot about understanding your biological decision making, because we like to think we're rational, right? We like to think we make decisions based on the ideas and information that we have, and it's actually nonsense. We make decisions based on that, but there's a huge element of what he calls the chimp, right? Like our inbuilt biological decision making that kind of overrides us a lot of the time. And if you've ever lost your temper, or you've ever said something and then thought afterwards, like, why did I say that? It's because it's how you felt at the time, and there's no truly understanding that unless you are human. Like no amount of artificial intelligence, I think, will ever really truly understand that. And so I guess the point of all of this is, as a human being, to really get your head around how and why you make decisions as you do, and understanding that biological element of it will help you understand, the person on that opposite. Why are they making the decisions that they are? Why are they behaving as they are? And I don't think, I think it's not, it's, yes, you can do a lot of science and, scary deep work on this. But for the layman, for somebody who's, just sells phones, you can definitely understand an awful lot more than, we don't get taught this stuff in school, right? And yeah, it's a fundamental part of who we are.
Yeah.
Um, and and we can be very frustrating at times. Like, I'm frustrated with my own decision making, let alone other people's. And so getting your head around that, I think, is going to become super important,
Yeah.
even more than it is already.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get me started about other people and their decisions. Yeah. So number two, storytelling is the key to unlock emotion.
Mm. It's a scary headline, isn't it? Yeah, look, I mean, so it links from the first point, right? Like, so if emotion plays a part in decision making, as a somebody in sales and marketing, clearly understanding that emotional triggers in yourself and why you make the decisions you do, understanding that allows you to then influence the emotions of others, right? And not in a like Darren Brown NLP kind of way, but in a positive way, right? And of course, storytelling. And this isn't some revolutionary new idea that hasn't been discussed. It's been talked about a lot, but it's really key. Like, storytelling in sales, storytelling in marketing, storytelling in the way in which we communicate to other humans is the best way to invoke an emotional response. And that emotional response will make what you are saying stick. It will make it resonate. It will make it, much more memorable, and therefore much more powerful in terms of interrupting their decision making. Like, if you want to do a presentation, before we started recording, right, we were talking about LinkedIn direct messages and being bombarded with people trying to sell us stuff, and just how badly most of them do the job. Very few people tell a story when they try and sell something, particularly when it's cold, and yet it's the best and easiest way to get someone to listen to you. So yeah, look, there's a whole world of really great resources out there on this. And again, I think one of the things that AI currently isn't brilliant at is storytelling. It can write a story, and if you've ever tried to ask ChatGPT to write you a story, kind of gets it, understands the rules behind it, the narrative structure. It can write you a paragraph. It can do you a beginning, a middle, and end. Um, but it's really hard to get it to be emotionally resonant in the text that it produces, and that's, I think, because there's something intangible and impossible to describe that that emotional biological part of us that I think comes out when we tell stories, and is really hard to replicate.
For sure. And, I think that this is how traditionally cultures pass on values and, myths and stories. But it's storytelling, right? But how knowledge was passed through generations. So I think there's something that's just hardwired into us. We've evolved to have that resonance with storytelling, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Like, yeah, for tens of thousands of years, people have sat around campfires. A lot of our early history as man is as a species
Mm,
is lost or forgotten because it wasn't written down. It was passed down, like you say, you
yeah.
know, in stories, and some of those stories still survive today. It's incredible how, when you look into some of the early like myths or fairy tales, all that sort of stuff, they're so old and they've been passed down over generation to generation. So yeah, there's something really fundamental about storytelling that's like deeply within us.
Yeah. Okay. Number three. So, and I like this. This is we're kind of building on each one here. So, develop your cultural intelligence, or CQ.
Hmm. Well, so I'm lucky enough to work in a very international business. Samsung's a Korean company. I work in the UK subsidiary. So at the very least, I get two very distinct cultures, and then of course, we're in a European office as well, with a whole bunch of different nationalities, and then there are people that come and work in the UK for Samsung from all over the world. So this is one that feels really, dear to my heart. I think one of the things that is both really exciting and also really frustrating sometimes when you're trying to communicate, cross culturally, is that there are really subtle nuances and inflections here. There's like, you live in a country for long enough, you begin to realize that there are, a bit like storytelling, a lot of unsaid, unspoken rules. There's a lot of knowledge that's passed not through, being told or being given the rule book,
Mm.
but just through, picking up on little inflections. And I think, you know, working in an international company, you have to be really attuned to those. And I think, look, business is only going to be more global. Teams are going to ever, be more global, particularly now with, hybrid and fluid working. Businesses being encouraged to build teams all across the world. So there's no doubt that that's a huge variety of cultures that have to kind of, fit together. Um, and and again, ask a computer, and they'll give you the kind of the easy answers, right? Or like the differences. But ask them to, like, how do I translate that? How do I understand your perspective, and match my own perspective? And in the middle, there's a unique blend
Mm.
of one or two or three or five different cultures to create a team that's the greater than the sum of the parts. I think that's an impossibly difficult conversation to have with a PC. It's a hard enough conversation as an adult human.
Mm.
Um, and yet there's so much value in building diverse teams. There's so much value in bringing those cultures together. Um, you know, Having a diverse team is like absolutely the cornerstone of any good um, modern organization now. Like, it's proven with the science, it's proven with the numbers. Build a diverse team and you'll get a better output. And so being able to shop from all these different cultures and build something unique, that's there's a lot of effort to bring that together. And you're never going to get that from a PC, or not for a long time yet.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I have anything anything to add to that. I think you put it quite nicely. It's about different perspectives, isn't it? I mean, how can it not be beneficial? But like you say, that the challenge is marrying well, I say two or multiple perspectives together, and finding a way to work
Yeah, and
synergistically.
look, if you go into it blind,
Mm.
you're not prepared for it. If you don't do the research, if you don't, understand the different cultures, negotiating styles is quite a studied thing. And I've had the pleasure of negotiating with different cultures and different countries, and I can tell you that negotiating with, people from Germany or Israel, where they're like super direct to the point of rudeness for a culture. I mean, the British are more, they're further down the line of like indirect communication. We're still more direct than, say, most Asian cultures, but we're way less direct than the Germans or the Israelis. And if you're not prepared for that and you don't expect it and you don't know it's coming, I might go like, wow, those guys are rude.
Mm.
I can't believe they're just, they want to skip straight to price. They don't want to talk about anything else. And yet it's not rudeness. It's not rudeness, because actually they are frustrated at my, like, why won't he just tell me what the price is? How rude. He's being really rude.
Yeah,
Um, and so, yeah, there are gaps that exist. And I think they're only going to get worse if you don't put the effort in to understand them.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so moving on. Are we on number five now? I believe number five.
Yeah, we're doing good.
Number
We're
four.
getting through it.
Number four. Become a world-class problem solver.
Mm. So this for me, like, I love solving problems. I get a real kick out of it. I think most people do. Like, most people like a puzzle, right? Most jigsaw puzzles are super popular for a reason, because there's something in us that's hardwired in our brain. We like to draw connections between things. It was a massive advantage for us biologically, to be able to solve problems, right? And so we've carried that with us. I think one of the things that generative AI is brilliant at is, it uses the total sum of knowledge, right? It scrapes data that we've produced broadly, and then it can stitch them together in ways that can seem quite novel, and surprising. And yet in reality, it's only really drawing inference between data that we've built and given the model. And so, particularly when I think about really abstract problem solving or really, really lateral thinking, which is, making connections between things that are rarely put together, as opposed to generative AI, which is much more putting connections between things which are often together. There's a big difference there between the types of problem solving. And I think one of the the skills that will become less useful as a human is the stuff that generative AI can do faster, quicker than us, right? So if it's a oft put together kind of problem, forget it, right? Just use the tool, right? Just go and use the tool. If it's a problem that is much more abstract or complex or lateral, that's the best word for it, then our brains are designed to put that together in a way that AI can't. And I do caveat it in the post, yet, right? And with all of this, it's yet, because I'm sure there's stuff coming, but yeah, right now, there's no way that that we can be beaten on complex problem solving, and particularly problem solving that involves multiple sets of different types of data. And what I mean by that is, right now we've got a model that does brilliantly at words, a model that does brilliantly at data, a model that can do brilliantly at pictures, right? And yet there isn't really yet a model that can kind of pin it all together, and especially not a model that can pin it all together and involve human decision making.
Yeah.
Right? The biological, irrational, emotional, illogical human decision making element of all of that.
Yeah.
And so if you're a consultant, or your job is to go into a business and problem solve, a massive part of what you do is having to think about, predict, and try and influence the human decision making element. Right? So there's no way that AI is going to get close to that for a long time. And so doubling down on learning how, because there are methods, there are techniques you can learn, but also just putting into practice like real abstract problem solving. There's books you can read, but there's also techniques that you can learn, and there's effort that you can put in now to become better at drawing the dots between drawing the lines between many different dots.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations in that space? I mean, you've suggested reading How to Have a Beautiful Mind by Edward de Bono. Anything?
Yeah, so he talks about rivers of thinking,
Mm.
which is a really interesting concept, right? So again, our brains are designed to get better and better at things because partly it involves less learning each time. And so the more learned a behavior, the more deeply set your river, the faster your boat goes, right? So it's a really muscle memory is the other way people describe it, particularly something physical, right? So if you do something every day, you get really good at it, you get really quick at it. Actually, the downside to that is if you want to stop doing it, it's actually quite difficult. Habits are formed partly because of that, right? People get addicted to the process of smoking as much as they do the nicotine. The nicotine is a very physical, addiction. The process of smoking is a very habitual thing. And so this is a bit of a tangent, but learning how to jump into a new river, learning how to force yourself into a new way of thinking, learning how to continually grow in your ability to learn new things will in itself allow you to start solving problems in a different way. Like, I'll give you a really simple example. I bet you now, if you have a regular meeting, like the same one every week, a trading meeting or a team meeting or whatever, and you do it in a physical place, and you have the same meeting in the same room every week, I bet you sit in the same seat, in the same place in the room.
Mm.
Right? I bet you. I bet, and 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 people listening to this, watching this, will sit in that same seat. And that's partly because of your habit forming, and it's partly because of, it makes you feel safe and comfortable. I challenge you to do this. Sit in a different place every time. Sit in a different seat deliberately. Sit next to a different person deliberately, right? Because what it does is it forces you to see things differently. And it start a new river, effectively.
Yeah.
So when I say abstract problem solving, I don't mean get great at Rubik's cubes or crossword puzzles. Well, those things do help, by the way. I mean, like, you have to train yourself to start to think differently about your environment and the problems you're faced with, and try and solve them in an abstract way, even if they're simple.
I love that. Even many of us are remote, but working from home, right? go out to a cafe. The weather's starting to get better, although yeah, it's not even in Scotland here. It's not too bad. I'm still wearing this, but yeah, go and sit in a park, like anywhere. Just it depends on where you are, right? But there's it does it. You can probably explain it better than me, but your brain just switches into a different mode, and you're able to think of like from over
Yeah,
here instead of over here. So
yeah. No, it's so true. But the opposite applies. If you've got a job to do and you want to do it super efficiently and you don't need to solve a problem and you just want to get it done,
mm,
yeah, like there's a reason why you go back to your comfy seat in the comfy cafe in the same place with the same music or the same, because it does actually help. It helps you focus.
yeah,
And I think the truth is those sorts of jobs that are just routine, that are easy, that they are the sorts of things that are going to be AI'd out of existence.
mm,
And so that those skills of being comfortable and sitting in your same seat, they're going to become less and less useful over time.
yeah. Okay, your human network is your value.
Mm. Well, I was trying to think what, because all of these are like yet. So AI isn't good at solving abstract problems yet.
Hmm.
AI isn't great at cultural borders yet, because in the end, they're all solvable with enough computing power and enough time.
Yeah.
It's just about, how much time are we talking? I guess the one thing that is impossible to replicate by very definition is a human to human connection, right? You and I can connect with
Mm.
each other in a way that you just cannot with another computer or another artificial intelligence. Now, there will come a point where you probably can't tell the difference. And then you might say to me, well, what difference does it make? If I can't tell the difference, if I
Yeah.
think it's a human, it might as well be a human. Let's park that for now, and just go with the fact that like the one thing that AI can never have is connection with another human.
Mm.
And I think as well, it's never been easier to make connections. Like one of the huge positive benefits of social media, and of the systems that we've built around ourselves at the moment is that it's, you and I only met a couple of weeks ago, right? We live in different places, we're in different businesses, we're in different towns. 20 years ago, we would have never had the opportunity to make this connection and
Hmm.
to be sat here talking today. And yet here we are. And that only happens because of the digital systems we've built. I think, everyone has to really double down on building their network. And it's a very old school. We've gone almost all the way full circle here. Sales used to be about relationships. It used to be about, I know that person, I can call them up, I've got a relationship with them. And I think in a way we are going to come back to that as an important, ever more important part of what it means to be human. And so I guess my central message here is, don't forget, even with all the flashy tools that you can now use, in the end, you're hopefully trying to talk to other human beings,
Yeah.
trying to communicate with other human beings. And and so the purpose of that is to make connections. It's not about the message itself, it's about what the message delivers for you, which is that connection with other human beings. So, nurture your network, talk to people, find out about other people, be interested in other people. And that's going to be a core part of what all of us do
Yeah.
in the future, because yeah, the days um of value being created by simply interacting with, a spreadsheet or writing words, that's that's probably going to go.
Yeah.
And so the value we create will be, broadly the value that we can create with other humans.
For sure. And even even if you are, say you're a seller listening to this right now, even if you're just looking at it purely from a self-interested point of view, staying in touch with somebody, having it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be best friends with the person, but staying around the hoop, as the phrase goes, stay in touch with people, just throw something to them every so often. Hey, I thought you might find this interesting, or something like that. These are small little gestures that you would just ask someone how they're doing every so often. You'd be
Yeah.
amazed how you may have had an initial conversation where they didn't have a use or an interest in whatever it is that you do and you sell, but 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line, if you nurture enough of those relationships, like I say, even from a selfish point of view or a commercial point of view, they'll come back round a lot of the time.
I 100%. And look, if you are thinking about it truly selfishly, the counterintuitive thing you have to get into your head is you have to give
Yeah.
with no expectation of getting.
Mm.
Right? That's how you nurture a relationship with a future get in mind, is that you have to just, give
Yeah.
completely unselfishly. And if only half the people that came into my LinkedIn inbox, or my emails, had that in mind. And because I think it is tough. I think there's a part of everyone who wants to, try and make a connection and immediately take something back.
Mm.
I'm insecure about this, and so I need, please tell me that I'm liked. Please give me something to help me feel better about the fact that I've reached out to you. But that never really works out. And so yeah, you have to, and particularly as a seller, right? Like, you've got to think about giving value with genuinely no expectation of it leading to anything.
Mm.
Give stuff away for free, give advice for free, give help for free, give away a white paper for free, give away, as much as you can. And if you have no expectation about it coming back, that's truly when I think you start receiving that same thing back in.
Yeah. Hey, there's so much there, we could have a whole separate conversation about that, I think. So really good.
For sure.
So we're just about coming up on time, so we'll jump into the last one. I think it ties it all together nicely. You say, finally, don't try and hold back the tide.
Mm. Well, look, I think, if you went back to, the late 90s and you said, we don't need to be digital, the internet's a fad, we're gonna stick with what we had because it worked for us. It wouldn't be very long before you were swept away really by the tide of digital transformation. And yet, even 20 years later, there are still a lot of businesses that are, not digital. I talk to businesses every day who are still replacing pen and paper. They're still replacing manual process with automated workflows. So I don't think this is tomorrow switch everything to AI. Don't tomorrow think, God, I've got to get rid of, what I have today and replace it with this shiny new thing. But but I think there is now an inevitability that AI is going to change fundamentally what we all do for a living, and not necessarily. It's much more about the how. How I do my job is going to be, on a day-to-day basis, is going to be influenced by AI, in one way, shape, or another. And you've only got to look at, what Microsoft or Google have integrated into their day-to-day tools to see the changes that are coming. And like Adobe and Firefly, like, so Adobe's, a business, and a lot of creatives right now will be feeling quite nervous about what's coming. If you've learned design, you went to college, you studied, you can draw beautiful things, create beautiful imagery. You could look at what's coming and go, well, my job's redundant. And yet Adobe, who are, the centerpiece of a lot of digital creativity, like they've gone all in. Firefly's amazing. Like, I've been playing with it the last few days since it came into beta, and it's incredible what you can do now with generative AI. I've been taking old photographs that I had and, decided to put giant land crabs into landscape photography, or, like this. It's a very exciting world. And I think the mistake that you could make would be thinking either and overestimating the change and panicking and switching into stuff immediately, or underestimating it and think, well, that's for the creatives, or that's for people that do copywriting. My business isn't going to be affected by that, because neither of those extremes are true.
Right.
So yeah, I think I used the picture of a surfing dog as a
Yeah.
metaphor. You've got to try and get that balance right. Surf the wave. Don't go too fast. Don't go too slow. Ride it out. See what happens. But embrace it, because it's coming for all of us. And if you allow it to be, it will be a super positive thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess just to add my tuppence to that, 2 cents, depending on where you're listening from, really just like be the best you can be. And I know that's really cringe and cliche, but I mean, I think that we need to strive for excellence in what we do, in our professions, in our personal life. And that means that obviously we're centered on sales and marketing here. For me, that means things like developing my emotional intelligence, my industry knowledge and technical proficiency, but also, embracing the technology. And I referenced Justin Michael again, TQ, tech tech quotient, kind of like CQ, right? For cultural intelligence, bring all of these things together and be the best that you can be in all of those areas. And you may still end up out of a job in a few years when AI gets, catches up with you, but hopefully you can, if not stem the tide, then ride the wave, which is the book that you've suggested here, right?
Yeah. Well, let's hope we're not all out of a job soon, because that would be a miserable way to end this. I do I do think, yeah, change is coming. Embrace it, ride the wave, try and enjoy it. Because changes, can be scary, can be difficult, but it's inevitable.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. I like it. Thanks for this, Adam. Really enjoyed the chat. You got me thinking about a lot of things as well. Where can people find you, connect with you?
Well, so if you need to buy any mobility equipment, you can come find me at Samsung. But yeah, like come find me on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Come and send me a message. I'd be really interested to hear your view. I think particularly if you work in a business that deals with mobile technology, super interested to hear your view on whether this is all good, bad, or indifferent for you.
Great. Thanks so much. Speak soon. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.